Thank you for being here. Thank you for having us. Just want to make a couple of brief comments. First, we think that the budget forecast that we're looking at today is good news. It's good news for the people of Minnesota. It's good news for Minnesota families. I just was looking at the document itself, and the first sentence, Minnesota's budget outlook for the current biennium has improved materially since last February's forecast. And I think in many ways this represents a confirmation of the wisdom of the Republican majority's approach to managing the state fiscal situation that we inherited 2 years ago. And you might recall that 2 years ago when we were all here in this room or somewhere in the Capitol, the headline there was we had this huge $6.2 billion deficit that we were looking at. Today it's 1.1. And so if you look at all in, everything considered, we're $5 billion better off today than we were 2 years ago when Republicans came into the majority after years and years and years of DFL leadership in the legislature. So that's what we believe that we did in the last 2 years is we took a situation where we had a pretty dramatic situation to try to deal with. We did that by managing the growth in spending, enacting what we felt to be reasonable reforms. We did not increase rates of taxation on the economy. We knew we were in a recovery. We knew that those things, in our belief, added to the burden on the economy to recover. We did not want to do that. And since we've done those things, we've seen the economy respond. We've seen revenues exceed the forecast. We've seen the spending actually improve. That hasn't been as much as we had actually forecasted it to be. We've also refilled the cash flow accounts, the reserves, and we've also restored or paid back a significant portion of the school aid shift. A large part of that, by the way, was passed by the DFL majorities under Governor Pawlenty. So the challenge that we face is obviously to create the conditions that allow the economy to recover, to create jobs for the people of Minnesota. We don't know what's going to happen at the federal level with the so-called fiscal cliff that we're looking at, but I think that to suggest that we need to grow the spending of the state budget beyond the 5%, $1.7 billion increase that we're looking at right now is not productive. If we would offer any advice to the new majority coming in is to look at what the approach that the Republican majorities took in this, which was to be prudent, to not overburden the economy, look at reform, live within the means that the public has already provided, do the right thing, and we should be able to find ourselves in a position of fiscal surplus. In fact, the document shows that everything staying as it is today, we should see a surplus in the out biennium. So we don't believe that we need more tax increases. There's always a lot of talk about that, tax rate increases. We've heard the governor and others, outside groups, talking about $6 billion in additional tax revenue. We think $1.7 billion is enough, 5% increase is enough. Maybe it's even time to think about tax cuts as a way of stimulating growth in the economy. Representative Daudt.
Thank you, and I'll just state that I very much agree with Senator Hann. I think that what we heard today in the briefing was good news. It's good news for Minnesotans. It shows that the budget is in a much better state today than it was 2 years ago. It shows that revenues are coming in higher than projected. It shows that spending is lower than projected, and it proves that the state government is much better off today than it was 2 years ago when we took control and 2 years ago when I got elected. We feel strongly that the reasons for this are the fact that we didn't raise taxes over the last couple of years, and that we really prioritize state spending. If the Democrats are looking at this document as some sort of evidence or reason for increasing taxes, they're not going to find that here. What this shows is because of our responsible fiscal policies of the last couple of years, that the state is on a trajectory coming out of this economic recession, and we feel it's on the right track. The DFL will have $1.7 billion of additional revenue in the next biennium to spend without raising one penny of taxes. We feel that that's enough. We think to talk about tax increases is grossly premature. We feel that raising taxes right now in this economy is going to be harmful to the economy. It's going to hurt Minnesota families, and we think it's going to make it harder for Minnesotans to find a good-paying job. My challenge to the DFL, and I think our challenge to the DFL, is let's live within those means. And if we really want to shoot for the stars, let's do what the Senator was talking about, and let's give some tax reductions or tax breaks to middle-class families. We're willing to offer, both the Senator and I are willing to offer our committee leads, and we know that our members are willing to roll up their sleeves to get to work to help solve this situation. And we showed that you could do it over the last couple of years. We dealt with a much larger budget deficit, and we feel like what we did over the last couple of years has proven to work well for Minnesota. So we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get to work, and we hope the DFL will take us up on that offer. And I think with that, we'll open it up for some questions.
Senator Hann, if you are so good at fiscal responsibility, why are you in the minority?
Well, the public gets to vote. They get to choose on who they want to represent them. Maybe this election wasn't about fiscal management. I don't know. But I think it's an uncontested fact when you look at the numbers. Where the budget was 2 years ago and the story that was being written then, we had nothing in reserve. We had nothing we had a big deficit. We had a huge problem. And where we are today, $5 billion better. There's no doubt about it. And we had majorities in the House and the Senate that were Republican majorities. And we did not raise tax increases to do it. So I don't know how you can look at those facts and say that that isn't a testimony to prudent fiscal management on the part of Republican majorities. So.
Senator Hann, you've had stewardship of the Health and Human Services budget, and I wonder, as you think about the possibility of a fiscal cliff happening in Washington, or a deal for that matter in Washington, what are the concerns that you would have about the impact of federal changes on Minnesota's Health and Human Services budget?
Well, I think one of the biggest concerns is what it's going to mean for medical assistance. And I think in the briefing we had, there was some discussion about that there's some uncertainty about what is the federal commitment going to be to the states in terms of funding the expansion of Medicaid. And those are things that are uncertain. And I think until we know that with more certainty, we've got to be very careful about our commitment as a state to grow those programs. And I think that there is a lot of uncertainty. We did hear in our briefing as well that if we do go over this fiscal cliff, if those tax rates do go up, it could result in significant loss of jobs to the economy, 115,000 jobs over the next couple of bienniums. Those are things that I think should concern all of us. And to look at that and then say, on top of that, we ought to be raising tax rates in Minnesota as well after they go up nationally, I don't understand the logic of that. So I think that there are some things that we need to be concerned about. I think, to me, it's an argument for prudence, an argument for trying to manage the budget within the restraints of current resources and focus on reforming the spending that we have.
Where are you going to cut if you don't want to raise taxes to make up the difference?
I think we have additional revenues. I don't know that we're talking about cutting. And again,
Where I come from, spending comes in, spending goes out. It looks like there's a $1.1 billion deficit. So how are you going to fix the deficit?
Well, I think that the majority party is going to put together a budget. We'll see what they propose. But I think, again, there is an opportunity for reform, and we'll see what the Democrats have been talking about reform, and we'll see what they propose.
Is there some legitimate tax reform you can see working with Democrats on this concept a lot, or talking about broadening the base and lowering the rate of sales tax? Is that something Republicans could get on board?
We've talked a lot about reform of various kinds. Tax reform has been talked about. I know Senator Ortman has talked about tax reform in our caucus. It really is a question of whether, when we hear the words tax reform from the DFL, do they really mean reform, or is that code for tax rate increases? Some of us are wondering about that. But to the extent that we're talking about reform and ways to make the tax code work more effectively, I think they'll find willing partners on the part of members of our caucus, and I assume the House as well. So,
specifically on what types of policies could you?
Well, I think the specifics of that, I think we'll leave to the process. But I think generally there is willingness on the part of Republicans to look at genuine reform. We are interested in trying to find ways to make the tax code be more attractive for investment, for economic growth. We think that's important. We want to make Minnesota more competitive. We think the tax code is a key part of that, and we think right now there's room for improvement. So we are interested in reform with the view of making our economy more attractive for investment and growth.
But on the sales tax, is it a non-starter to
I'm not going to say it's a non-starter because I'm not here to claim any specialization or expertise in tax policy, but I just want to make it clear that as far as real tax reform, Republicans are interested in having that conversation. We're not so much interested in trying to say that's a rationale to burden the economy with additional taxes.
So, Daudt, Senator Bach made a big deal about working with business. Do you think that there is some bipartisan tax reform possibilities realistically?
I'll agree with Senator Hann. I think we're very willing to come to the table and roll up our sleeves and get to work on tax reform. My translation when a Democrat says tax reform, what they mean is tax increase. So I don't know that we should be expecting that, but there's been an awful lot of talk about which taxes we can increase, and we just feel that that's really premature. You've seen task force reports come out in the last couple of weeks, and we've all seen them talking about higher taxes on gas and on clothing. I mean, these are things that are going to hit lower and middle income Minnesota families really hard, and we just feel like this isn't the time to do that. Again, the Democrats are going to have additional revenue, $1.7 billion to spend to get to the balanced budget. We think they can figure out how to live within their means, and we want to help them do that.
I think there's one area that we haven't, actually a couple areas we haven't talked about. I think there will be additional revenues that will be gained in further reforms, government effectiveness and efficiency, such as the SWIFT accounting system and gaining more in the Medicaid match that we were unaware of. And I think harnessing technology so that we can better perform government services is another way that we'll see additional revenues on the bottom line. There's another hidden gem in the 202-page report. I think it's on about page 75, and that has to do with literacy. That's something that we know is critical. And there was one area where spending actually increased, and that was in the amount of literacy incentive aid that was paid to our schools. That means we have more kids reading on grade level, which is very important to our future as well. So I'll be looking for those efficiencies in government services and increased performance of our students.
Just to echo what Senator Nelson brought to light, I think, while the public may not have always appreciated the process last year that we went through in reaching a balanced budget, the hard work of reform and trying to find ways of doing things better with the taxpayers' money and value is hard work, and that's really what I think what government should be about. It's pretty easy to have more expensive government. It may not be so easy to have government that actually works better and obtains results for the taxpayers. And I think if you go across the spectrum, regardless of political affiliation, most voters would think that government perhaps could do better in the efficiency and how well we spend your money category. That, I think, is really the challenge of legislative leadership. And I hope that's what we see over the next 2 years.
Senator Hann, in regards to fiscal responsibility, you're passing the baton or the books over to the new incoming majority. What will the resolve of the Michael Broadcorp issue be?
I think at the end of the day, there should be no impact at all, is my belief. I think that we believe that the lawsuit is frivolous, and we think the court will find that to be true. Anything else? Any other questions? I think we're done. Thank you. Thanks so much.